entirely, entirely,
entirely, entirely.
Our situation is entirely different. Our situation is entirely different.
The ridge consists entirely of volcanic rock. The ridge consists entirely of volcanic rock. Her reasons were not entirely clear. Her reasons were not entirely clear.
Properly, properly,
Properly, properly.
The brakes don't seem to be working properly. The brakes don't seem to be working properly.
Then he's not doing his job properly. Then he's not doing his job properly. Parents should teach their children to behave properly in public. Parents should teach their children to behave properly in public.
Properly trained staff. Properly trained staff. Annually, annually,
annually, annually.
The Jazz Festival is held annually in July. The Jazz Festival is held annually in July.
Accordingly, accordingly.
Accordingly, accordingly.
Catherine still considered him a child and treated him accordingly. Catherine still considered him a child and treated him accordingly.
Some of the laws were contradictory. Accordingly, measures were taken to clarify them. Some of the laws were contradictory. Accordingly, measures were taken to clarify them. Strictly, strictly.
Strictly, strictly.
Alcohol is strictly forbidden on school premises. Alcohol is strictly forbidden on school premises.
The ban on hunting is not strictly enforced. The ban on hunting is not strictly enforced.
Relatively, relatively.
Relatively, relatively. The system is relatively easy to use. The system is relatively easy to use. E-commerce is a relatively recent phenomenon. E-commerce is a relatively recent phenomenon.
Reasonably, reasonably.
Reasonably, reasonably.
The car is in reasonably good condition. The car is in reasonably good condition.
He's doing reasonably well at school. He's doing reasonably well at school.
Definitely, definitely.
Definitely, definitely.
Do you reckon Margot will be there? Definitely not. Do you reckon Margot will be there? Definitely not.
The hotel fitness centre is definitely worth a visit. The hotel fitness centre is definitely worth a visit.
I definitely need a holiday. I definitely need a holiday.
expressly, expressly.
Expressly, expressly.
He was expressly forbidden to speak to the girl. He was expressly forbidden to speak to the girl. The building is expressly designed to conserve energy. The building is expressly designed to conserve energy.
Considerably, considerably.
Considerably. Considerably.
It's considerably colder today. It's considerably colder today.
Conditions have improved considerably over the past few years. Conditions have improved considerably over the past few years.
Totally, totally.
Totally, totally.
That's a totally different matter. That's a totally different matter.
It's like learning a totally new language. It's like learning a totally new language.
Terrorism is totally unacceptable in a civilized world. Terrorism is totally unacceptable in a civilized world.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Periodic. Periodic.
Periodic. Periodic.
Teachers meet periodically to discuss progress. Teachers meet periodically to discuss progress.
Commonly. Commonly.
Commonly. Commonly.
Sodium chloride is more commonly known as salt. Sodium chloride is more commonly known as salt.
A commonly used industrial chemical. A commonly used industrial chemical. Lung cancer is the most commonly found cancer in men. Lung cancer is the most commonly found cancer in men.
Commonly available software packages. Commonly available software packages.
Securely. Securely.
Securely. Securely.
All firearms should be kept securely locked in a cabinet. All firearms should be kept securely locked in a cabinet.
Customers can now buy products securely over the Internet. Customers can now buy products securely over the Internet.
By that time, democracy had become securely established in Spain. By that time, democracy had become securely established in Spain.
Largely. Largely.
Largely. Largely.
The state of Nevada is largely desert. The state of Nevada is largely desert.
It had been a tiring day, largely because of all the tedious waiting. It had been a tiring day, largely because of all the tedious waiting.
Thoroughly. Thoroughly.
Thoroughly. Thoroughly.
She sat feeling thoroughly miserable. She sat feeling thoroughly miserable.
Thoroughly cooked meat. Thoroughly cooked meat.
The room had been thoroughly cleaned. The room had been thoroughly cleaned.
Exclusively. Exclusively.
Exclusively. Exclusively.
This offer is available exclusively to people who call now. This offer is available exclusively to people who call now.
Comfortably. Comfortably.
Comfortably. Comfortably.
The hotel is modern and comfortably furnished. The hotel is modern and comfortably furnished.
His comfortably baggy jeans. His comfortably baggy jeans. I was sitting comfortably in the lounge reading a newspaper. I was sitting comfortably in the lounge reading a newspaper.
Immediately. Immediately.
Immediately. Immediately.
Mix in the remaining ingredients and serve immediately. Mix in the remaining ingredients and serve immediately.
The telephone rang, and he answered it immediately. The telephone rang, and he answered it immediately. He retired immediately after the end of the war. He retired immediately after the end of the war.
I can't remember what happened immediately before the crash. I can't remember what happened immediately before the crash.
Momentarily. Momentarily.
Momentarily. Momentarily.
She was momentarily lost for words. She was momentarily lost for words.
Jimmy paused momentarily. Jimmy paused momentarily.
specifically, specifically,
specifically, specifically. Advertising that specifically targets children. Advertising that specifically targets children.
I specifically asked you not to do that. I specifically asked you not to do that.
Specifically, the department wanted answers to the following questions. Specifically, the department wanted answers to the following questions.
Dramatically, dramatically.
Dramatically. Dramatically.
Output has increased dramatically. Output has increased dramatically.
3 years on, Jack's life has dramatically changed. 3 years on, Jack's life has dramatically changed.
Accidentally, accidentally.
Accidentally. Accidentally.
She accidentally dropped the vase on her foot. She accidentally dropped the vase on her foot.
Overly, overly.
Overly, overly.
Your views on economics are overly simplistic. Your views on economics are overly simplistic.
I'm not overly fond of cats. I'm not overly fond of cats.
recently, recently.
Recently, recently. He has recently been promoted to assistant manager. He has recently been promoted to assistant manager.
A recently published biography. A recently published biography.
Jerry lived in Cairo until quite recently. Jerry lived in Cairo until quite recently.
More recently, he has appeared in a number of British films. More recently, he has appeared in a number of British films.
Highly, highly.
Highly, highly.
A highly successful politician. A highly successful politician.
Tom's mother was highly critical of the school's approach. Tom's mother was highly critical of the school's approach.
Highly competitive industries. Highly competitive industries.
A highly desirable neighborhood. A highly desirable neighborhood. She is a highly educated woman. She is a highly educated woman.
Highly paid experts. Highly paid experts.
A highly developed economy. A highly developed economy. I've always thought very highly of Michael. I've always thought very highly of Michael.
A highly regarded author. A highly regarded author.
Widely, widely.
Widely, widely. Organic food is now widely available. Organic food is now widely available.
An author who had traveled widely in the Far East. An author who had traveled widely in the Far East.
A widely used method. A widely used method.
These laws were widely regarded as too strict. These laws were widely regarded as too strict. This view was not widely held. This view was not widely held.
The quality of the applicants varies widely. The quality of the applicants varies widely.
Dense, dense.
Dense. Dense. A densely populated area. A densely populated area.
Strategic, strategic.
Strategic, strategic.
Strategically placed video cameras can alert police to any trouble. Strategically placed video cameras can alert police to any trouble.
Currently. Currently.
Currently. Currently.
The products that are currently available. The products that are currently available.
He's currently working on his first novel. He's currently working on his first novel.
Eventually. Eventually.
Eventually. Eventually.
He eventually escaped and made his way back to England. He eventually escaped and made his way back to England. Eventually she got a job and moved to London. Eventually she got a job and moved to London.
Primarily. 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 Primarily.
The advertisement is aimed primarily at children. The advertisement is aimed primarily at children.
Early. Early.
Early. Early.
We arrived early. We arrived early.
They must have come home early. They must have come home early. The building should be finished early next year. The building should be finished early next year.
The restaurant opened earlier this month. The restaurant opened earlier this month.
Persistent. Persistent.
Persistent. Persistent.
Persistently low rainfall. Persistently low rainfall.
Formerly. Formerly.
Formerly. Formerly.
Kiribati, formerly known as the Gilbert Islands. Kiribati, formerly known as the Gilbert Islands.
This elegant hotel was formerly a castle. This elegant hotel was formerly a castle.
Moderately. Moderately.
Moderately. Moderately.
A moderately successful film. A moderately successful film.
He did moderately well in the exams. He did moderately well in the exams.
Both hotels are moderately priced. Both hotels are moderately priced.
Consistent. Consistent.
Consistent. Consistent.
Consistently high performance. Consistently high performance.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He made his reasons for resigning absolutely clear. He made his reasons for resigning absolutely clear.
Are you absolutely sure? Are you absolutely sure?
This cake is absolutely delicious. This cake is absolutely delicious.
The burglars took absolutely everything. The burglars took absolutely everything. Jim knew absolutely nothing about the business when he joined the firm. Jim knew absolutely nothing about the business when he joined the firm. He has absolutely no experience of marketing. He has absolutely no experience of marketing.
Fairly. Fairly.
Fairly. Fairly.
The house had a fairly large garden. The house had a fairly large garden.
She speaks English fairly well. She speaks English fairly well.
The instructions seem fairly straightforward. The instructions seem fairly straightforward.
I felt I hadn't been treated fairly. I felt I hadn't been treated fairly.
Inadvertently. Inadvertently.
Inadvertently. Inadvertently.
Viruses can be spread inadvertently by email users. Viruses can be spread inadvertently by email users.
Robinson's name was inadvertently omitted from the list. Robinson's name was inadvertently omitted from the list.
Apparently. Apparently.
Apparently. Apparently.
Apparently, the company is losing a lot of money. Apparently, the company is losing a lot of money.
I wasn't there, but apparently it went well. I wasn't there, but apparently it went well.
Adverse. Adverse.
Adverse. Adverse.
Developments which had adversely affected their business. Developments which had adversely affected their business.
Prominent. Prominent.
Prominent. Prominent.
Her photo was prominently displayed on his desk. Her photo was prominently displayed on his desk.
Occasionally. Occasionally.
Occasionally. Occasionally.
Occasionally, Alice would look up from her books. Occasionally, Alice would look up from her books.
We only see each other very occasionally. We only see each other very occasionally.
Previously. Previously.
Previously. Previously.
Almost half the group had previously been heavy smokers. Almost half the group had previously been heavy smokers.
6 months previously, he had smashed up his car. 6 months previously, he had smashed up his car.
Evenly. Evenly.
Evenly. Evenly.
Make sure the surface is evenly covered with paint. Make sure the surface is evenly covered with paint.
Spread the butter evenly over the toast. Spread the butter evenly over the toast.
Support for the Liberals is fairly evenly spread across the country. Support for the Liberals is fairly evenly spread across the country.
Make sure the weight is evenly distributed. Make sure the weight is evenly distributed.
Markedly. Markedly.
Markedly. Markedly. Johnson and Rivera have markedly different leadership styles. Johnson and Rivera have markedly different leadership styles.
Trade has increased markedly. Trade has increased markedly.
Overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly.
Overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly.
Congress voted overwhelmingly in favor of the bill. Congress voted overwhelmingly in favor of the bill.
The response was overwhelmingly positive. The response was overwhelmingly positive.